Picture this. It's a Friday night in modern-day Chicago, London, or Tokyo. You walk into a dimly lit bar, the smell of hops fills the air, and you order a crisp, cold IPA. To us, beer is the ultimate universal language, a symbol of relaxation and social bonding. But if you were to hop into a time machine and travel back 2,000 years to the heart of the Roman Empire, and you asked a waiter for a pint of your favorite brew, he wouldn't just be confused, he would be insulted. To the Romans, beer wasn't just a bad drink. It was considered liquid rot, a disgusting, foul-smelling concoction fit only for the unwashed barbarians of the north. Yet, at the same time, this very drink was the literal fuel that built the Great Pyramids of Giza and the very reason human beings stopped wandering the earth and started building cities. Today, we are diving deep into a clash of cultures that defined the ancient world. We're exploring the beer before bread theory, the goddess who gave us the first recipe, and why the most powerful empire in history tried and failed to erase beer from the map. This is the origin of beer, ancient Rome versus the world. To understand why the Romans hated beer so much, we first have to understand just how vital beer was to the birth of human civilization itself. For decades, historians believed that humans settled down and started farming because they wanted to make bread. It makes sense, right? Bread is the staff of life. But a growing group of archaeologists and biomolecular researchers are now arguing for a much more intoxicating theory. We didn't settle down for toast. We settled down for a cold one. Evidence for this, beer before bread, hypothesis takes us back staggering 13,000 years to the Rakefet cave in what is now Israel. Here, researchers found traces of a 13,000-year-old beer-like substance in stone mortars. This was the work of the Natufians, a semi-sedentary group of hunter-gatherers. They weren't even full-time farmers yet, but they were already gathering wild grains and processing them into a fermented mash. Why? Because beer was a miracle. In a world where drinking from a stream could kill you with parasites, the fermentation process in beer killed off pathogens. It was safer than water, packed with B vitamins, and, let's be honest, it made the harsh reality of the Stone Age a little more bearable. As we move forward in time to around 4000 BCE, we hit the cradle of civilization, Sumeria. In the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, beer wasn't just a drink, it was a pillar of society. The Sumerians had over 16 different types of beer, ranging from dark ale to fresh beer. They even had a goddess dedicated specifically to the craft, Ninkasi. The hymn to Ninkasi is one of the coolest artifacts in history because it isn't just a prayer, it's a literal recipe. It describes bapir, a twice-baked bread that was crumbled into water and fermented in large jars. If you saw a Sumerian drinking beer, it wouldn't look like a modern Heineken. It was thick, more like a boozy porridge, filled with floating bits of grain and husks. This is why you see ancient carvings of people drinking from large communal pots using long, thin straws made of reeds or even gold. The straw wasn't for style, it was a filter to get past the chunky bits at the top. In Sumeria, beer was the great equalizer. From the king in his palace to the laborer in the field, everyone drank from the same pot. It was a communal experience that bonded the community together. But the true golden age of ancient beer arguably happened further west, in the land of the pharaohs. In ancient Egypt, beer known as heket was as essential as the Nile itself. If you were a laborer working on the Great Pyramid of Giza, you weren't being paid in gold or silver, you were paid in beer. The standard ration for a pyramid builder was about 4 to 5 liters of beer a day. This wasn't about getting the workers drunk, it was about nutrition. Egyptian beer was thick, sweet, and incredibly calorie-dense. It provided the energy needed to haul multi-ton limestone blocks under a scorching sun. It was so central to their life that the Egyptian word for food was often a combination of the signs for bread and beer. Ancient Egyptian beer was often flavored with dates or honey, and it lacked one ingredient we consider essential today: hops. Without hops to provide that bitter balance and preservative quality, ancient beer was sweet, slightly sour, and had to be consumed quickly before it turned into vinegar. This was the world of the East, a world where grain was king, and beer was the divine gift that made civilization possible. But as the centuries rolled by, a new power was rising in the Mediterranean. A power built not on grain, but on the vine. Enter the Romans. To understand the Roman perspective, you have to understand their obsession with Romanitas, the idea of what it meant to be a civilized Roman. For a Roman, civilization was defined by olive oil, wheat bread, and, above all, wine. Wine was elegant. It was clear. It was aged. It was the drink of the gods, specifically Bacchus. When the Romans began expanding their empire, they encountered the others. To the north, they found the Germanic tribes and the Gauls. To the south and east, they found the Egyptians and the remnants of the Persian Empire. What did all these barbarians have in common? They drank beer. The Roman reaction to beer was visceral. The famous Roman historian Tacitus described Germanic beer as a liquid made from barley or wheat, fermented into a certain resemblance to wine, but a corrupted one. Note that word, corrupted. To the Roman mind, beer was a perversion of nature. They saw the fermentation of grain as a form of rotting. While wine was fruit transformed, beer was grain decayed. The Roman Emperor Julian even wrote a poem mocking beer, claiming it smelled like a he-goat, whereas wine smelled like nectar. This wasn't just a matter of taste. It was a matter of class and ethnic superiority. If you drank beer, you were telling the world you were a provincial, a commoner, or worse, an enemy of Rome. Yet, here is the irony. As the Roman legions marched into the cold, damp forests of Britain and Germany, they found something frustrating. Grapes don't grow well in the mud of northern Europe. If the soldiers wanted to drink, they had two choices: pay an absolute fortune to have wine shipped in amphorae across the Alps, or do the unthinkable. In the frontier forts along Hadrian's Wall in Britain, archaeologists have found tablets known as the Vindolanda Tablets. These are essentially the emails of the Roman army. And what do they say? They contain frantic requests for more cerevisia, the Roman word for beer. Even the toughest Roman centurions, who likely spent their days making fun of beer-drinking barbarians, eventually realized that when you're freezing in a British winter, a thick, warm ale is exactly what you need to keep going. This sets the stage for a fascinating cultural tug-of-war. On one side, the elite Roman wine snobs, who looked down their noses at anything made from grain. On the other, the practical reality of an empire that was becoming increasingly diverse and barbarized. The story of beer in the ancient world isn't just about a recipe, it's a story of how a drink can be a badge of identity, a currency of labor, and a point of conflict between the civilized world and the wild frontier. But how exactly did they make this barbarian brew? And could you even stomach a glass of it today? To find out, we have to look at the ancient chemistry that turned a handful of soggy grain into the world's first party starter. To understand the ancient chemistry that turned a handful of soggy grain into the world's first party starter, we have to look past our modern pint glasses. If you took a time machine back to a Roman tavern in the 1st century AD and ordered a cold one, you'd be in for a massive shock. First off, it wouldn't be cold. Second, it wouldn't have that signature bitter bite we love. Why? Because hops, the flower that gives modern beer its bitterness and preservative qualities, didn't become a standard ingredient until roughly the 9th century. Ancient beer was a different beast entirely. In the Roman provinces of Gaul and Britain, brewers used a mixture of herbs known as brewed. We're talking about bog myrtle, yarrow, heather, and sometimes even wild rosemary. The result? A drink that was sweet, herbal, and highly intoxicating, but with a shelf life of, well, about 3 days before it turned into vinegar. This brings us to the great cultural divide. For the Roman elite, wine was the drink of the gods. It was stable, it aged beautifully, and it represented the order of the Mediterranean. Beer, on the other hand, was seen as unstable and decayed. The famous Roman historian Tacitus once described Germanic beer as a liquid made from barley or wheat, fermented into a certain resemblance to wine, but loathsome. But here is where the archaeology gets spicy. Despite the snobbery of the Roman writers, the Vindolanda Tablets, a collection of wooden postcards found near Hadrian's Wall in northern England, tell a very different story. These tablets are the text messages of the ancient world. In one famous letter, a Roman cavalryman writes to his friend, essentially saying, "My fellow soldiers have no beer. Please order some to be sent." Wait a minute. If Romans hated beer so much, why were their elite frontier soldiers begging for it? The answer lies in pragmatism. Rome was an empire of logistics. In the sun-drenched hills of Italy and Greece, grapes grew like weeds. But in the damp, foggy forests of Germany or the rainy highlands of Britain, viticulture was a nightmare. Shipping heavy amphorae of wine across the Alps was expensive and slow. Beer, however, could be made anywhere you could grow grain. It was the liquid bread that fueled the expansion of the empire, whether the senators in Rome liked it or not. Let's look at the ancient recipe contrast. Roman wine was often doctored with lead, don't try that at home, honey, and seawater. It was a drink of artifice. Ancient beer was a drink of the earth. Brewers would sprout the grain, dry it over open fires, giving it a smoky, campfire flavor, and then mash it in large wooden vats. Without thermometers, they relied on the brewer's thumb or the timing of a prayer to know when the brew was ready. The social hierarchy was clear. If you were a high-ranking governor, you drank imported Falernian wine to show off your Romanness. But if you were a legionary standing guard in the freezing mud of the Danube, you were drinking beer. It was the ultimate blue-collar versus white-collar divide of antiquity. As the centuries rolled on, this barbarian brew began to win the war of attrition. When the Roman Empire in the West finally crumbled in the 5th century, the sophisticated trade routes for wine crumbled with it. But the grain remained. The Dark Ages were, in many ways, the golden age of beer. This leads us to the legacy we see today. Have you ever wondered why we associate beer with monasteries and monks? It started right here. As the Roman civil structures vanished, the church became the keeper of knowledge and the keeper of the recipes. Monks realized that beer wasn't just a drink, it was a way to survive the Lenten fast. They called it times liquidum non frangit unium. Liquid does not break the fast. Today, the wine versus beer debate still exists, but the roles have blurred. We have craft beers that cost more than a bottle of Bordeaux and canned wine you can buy at a gas station. But the DNA of that ancient conflict remains. When you choose a hearty, malty ale on a cold night, you are tapping into the same survival instinct of a Roman soldier in 100 AD. When you choose a crisp, light lager, you're looking for that refreshment that the ancients tried so hard to find in their herbal gruit. The origin of beer isn't just a story of fermentation, it's a story of human adaptation. It's about how we took the humble grass of the field and, through a bit of accidental chemistry and a lot of trial and error, created a cultural phenomenon that outlasted the greatest empire the world had ever seen. So, the next time you raise a glass, remember, you're not just drinking a beverage, you're drinking the loathsome liquid that conquered the conquerors. You're drinking history. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the boozy history of the ancient world, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel stay fermented with new ideas. What's your pick? Are you with the Roman elite and their wine, or are you a barbarian beer lover at heart? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your takes on history, and if you want to see more videos on the secret history of the food and drinks we love, don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. We've got plenty more stories brewing, from the coffee houses of the Ottoman Empire to the secret spices of the Silk Road. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and as the Romans would say, nunc est bibendum, now is the time for drinking. See you in the next one.